Our club's always been a forum for visionaries, public figures, and decision makers to command attention to the issues of our time and inform the most relevant, compelling, and challenging conversations. Here we offer first-person access to dynamic political, business, and public personality.
The Canadian Club is one of the most important podiums anywhere in the world that a Canadian can speak to, tell Canadians what it is that they think, develop those thoughts. And so I want to thank you for that very, very much.
Please join me in thanking our esteemed panelists today.
Through our programs and events, including our youth and young leaders programs, our diversity partnerships, our joint events, and our media and social media opportunities, we offer you access to dynamic political, social, and business figures from abroad and right here at home.
The platform from which the eloquence of Canada has flowed all of that time, whether it be business, education, politics, sports, arts, and culture. If someone wants to say something to Canadians about this country and about the future of this country, this is the venue you choose.
Good afternoon again, and a warm welcome to those of you joining us online at CanadianClub.org. My name is Glenn Parkinson, and I'm president of Canadian Club Toronto and today's host. Now, whether you're with us in the room or online, we couldn't do the events we do today without the support of our sponsors. So today's event is sponsored by EY, Norton Rose Fulbright, and Tories. So thank you all for supporting what we do. I'd also like to acknowledge our seasoned sponsor, Canadian Bankers Association, and our airline partner, Air Canada. In addition, our partnership with Canada's Forest Trust allows our season to be carbon neutral thanks to forests they plant and manage in our name. So thank you to Canada's Forest Trust as well. Thank you. Now, those of you who have joined us before know that we often invite young leaders from across the city to join us. So today we are welcoming a table from the C Centre of Young Black Professionals, Rotman School of Management, and Toronto Metropolitan University. Thank you for joining us. And lastly, one of my favorite aspects of our events, and one that's close to me today because I'm going to be helping lead a Q&A, is the ability to get involved in our discussions. So you'll see a question card on your tables. If you have questions, please do think of some questions. Write them down, hold them up, and we will bring them to the front of the room and try to get them into our Q&A portion. And for those of you online, there's a button on the right-hand side of your screen that says click to submit question. Please use that and we'll print it and bring it up to the front. And now I'm pleased to invite Richard Skippon from EY Canada to the stage. Richard is the firm's lead partner for Canadian Tire, and he will introduce our guest of honor.
Good afternoon. My name is Rich Skippon, and I am EY's Global Client Service Partner for Canadian Tire. In this role, I get to work with one of Canada's most iconic companies, bringing the best of EY to support Canadian Tire in achieving its ambitious strategic agenda. And I get to spend time with an organization that is my retail therapy. Contrary to what my wife might say, I firmly believe you can never have too many maximum tools. This role also affords me the privilege of introducing today's speaker, Mr. Greg Hicks, President and CEO of Canadian Tire Corporation. We all know Canadian Tire has long been more than just tires, but the size and breadth of CTC is impressive. Today, it comprises 11 banners, retail banners, including Canadian Tire Retail, Marks, Sport Check, and Party City, as well as Canadian Tire Financial Services and CT REIT. It owns brands that include Helly Hansen, Paderno, Canvas, Mastercraft, and of course my favorite, Maximum, to name a few. Greg was appointed CEO of this large enterprise on March 12, 2020. So for those of you who are history buffs in the room, you may remember March 2020 as an especially exciting time in the world. If you talk about March 12th specifically, that was less than 24 hours after the World Health Organization declared COVID-19 a global pandemic. I can't think of a more challenging time to take the helm of any company, never mind a predominantly bricks and mortar retailer. Greg successfully led the company through the pandemic and has described the experience as a master class in leadership, teaching him more in 6 weeks than he would have learned in 6 years. And it's a good thing, too, as the pandemic was just the start. It was followed by a supply chain crisis, runaway inflation, rocketing interest rates, and of course a collapse in discretionary spending. They say resilience is the new critical leadership capability. I would propose that Greg has this in spades. Through all this, Greg has remained focused on building and transforming CTC. He has aligned the enterprise to a clear brand purpose. We are here to make life in Canada better. He launched a strategic growth plan with focused investments in areas critical to building CTC for tomorrow, including the expansion of the owned brands portfolio, investing in connected omni-channel customer experience, strengthening supply chain infrastructure, and modernizing IT. Overall, he is driving sustainable long-term growth that delivers value to all CTC's stakeholders. Greg is relentlessly focused on bringing customers the products they want and need to make life better, to make life in Canada better. Whether that means expanding the own brands offering or pursuing acquisitions like Party City, which has attracted a new customer segment to Canadian Tire Retail. Greg was named Distinguished Canadian Retailer of the Year by the Retail Council of Canada in 2023 and is the past recipient of Canada's Top 40 Under 40. He is a member of CTC's Board of Directors and the Board of Directors of the Business Council of Canada. Previously, he was a trustee for CT REIT and the former chair of the Retail Council of Canada. It is my great pleasure to welcome Greg Hicks to our stage as the speaker this afternoon.
Well, thank you, Richard, for that very kind introduction, and good afternoon, everyone. Before I begin, Glenn, I'd like to thank you and the Canadian Club for inviting me, EY, Norton Rose, and Tories for sponsoring today's event. This is my first ever appearance on the Canadian Club stage, and I'm pleased to be here this afternoon. I know that your time is precious, and I'm flattered that you chose it to spend it with me. It goes without saying that we are living in challenging times, from continued economic uncertainty to ongoing geopolitical unrest. And given the lack of winter we just experienced, many parts of Canada will likely be bracing themselves for another summer marked by extreme weather events. For retailers, both Canadian and globally, we're currently facing three distinct categories of challenges. The first is the disruption challenge, which is not new. Retailers are managing a shrinking middle as they're pinched on one side by dollar and discount stores and the other by luxury brands, all while fighting the ever-encroaching e-commerce behemoths. The second is the post-pandemic affordability challenge, which is relatively new. Although the lockdowns forced many retailers to swiftly upgrade their online presence, systems, and processes, it wasn't long before we were hit with rising inflation, unprecedented interest rate hikes. This fundamentally changed our operating environment, and the resultant softened consumer demand has significantly impacted industry earnings, including our own. The third is the change challenge, which is ever present. Consumers' wants and needs in terms of products, services, and experiences always have and always will evolve. This has no doubt been recently accelerated by changing weather patterns. If it doesn't snow, nobody needs a snowblower or wants a toboggan. In short, omni-channel retailers need to adapt faster and more often to change, all while battling disruptors and navigating the current economic landscape. With that in mind, Richard, I think it's safe to say that my masterclass is far from over. This certainly seems to be a steep uphill battle for retailers. And the question is, how do retailers maintain their footing on such unsteady ground? We think at Canadian Tire, it starts with controlling what you can while mitigating what you can't. This includes balancing short-term challenges with driving long-term growth. By looking at the capabilities you already have, then maximizing those that are most powerful for your brand. For us at Canadian Tire, this means maintaining our conviction in our Better Connected strategy. And I'll tell you why. As Richard mentioned, I took over CEO of CTC at the onset of COVID-19. And as challenging as the pandemic was, it cemented our why. It led us to develop a new strategy anchored on a clear brand purpose that we're here to make life in Canada better. In creating our strategy, we looked 10 years ahead to consider our future consumer, competitive, and operating environment. And what we saw is that we would be national champions competing against world champions with scale. How could we win in that arena? Certainly not on price when you're competing with that scale, and it's unlikely that you can out-Amazon Amazon. We knew that we needed to be competitive on the key components of the shopping journey, but had to find where we could truly differentiate ourselves. And we saw our differentiator show up in spades during COVID. We care about Canadians and the communities in which they live, because we live here too. And because we're there for Canadians with the products, services, and support when they need it most, Canadians trust us. And we have the data to back it up. In addition to Canadian Tire being named Canada's most trusted brand by Morning Consult last year, we also partnered with a globally renowned research firm to launch our own brand trust index. And the results confirm that Canadian Tire Retail is the #1 most trusted brand within its peer set in Canada. But to further differentiate ourselves from the competition, we must develop an even stronger emotional connection with our customers and reinforce their trust in us. Because that's something we have that is very tough, if not impossible, for our competition to replicate. So our strategy is more than investing in improving our omnichannel customer experience. It's about driving connection, connecting our employees to our brand purpose and to a higher collective ambition, connecting our physical and digital channels, connecting our investments to build not just a better company, but better communities and a better Canada. And ultimately, drive stronger relationships focused on being more relevant and providing more value for every Canadian, with the belief that if we do this right, we can build a stronger emotional connection with them and win. So our business strategy is centered upon emotional connection. And turning our strategy into action starts with putting the customer at the center of everything we do. Now that is extremely easy to say, which is perhaps why every business strategy textbook suggests it. But how do you actually go about creating meaningful change in a 101-year-old company to truly transform your business? And we at Canadian Tire believe that there are 2 keys required for this unlock. The first are your capabilities, and the second is your mindset. Starting with capabilities, which for us is triangle first-party data and personalization. We have a wealth of first-party customer data thanks to our Triangle Rewards loyalty program, which today boasts more than 11 million active members. More important, however, is that we have the capabilities required to generate insights from the data. After all, data is only as good as the insights that it can provide. And getting to bright on this objective from a required investment standpoint is no easy task. This has been a multi-year investment journey for us. It's involved the standardizing, formatting, structuring of our customer data, and both the development and transitioning of customer models and reporting into a real-time cloud environment. It has also involved the integration of our customer data to internal digital platforms like web, mobile, and email, and to external channels and partners, including social media, all with the objective of being able to deliver communications and offers to a single customer in their channel of choice. As Triangle members engage in our digital properties, we learn more about them. And the data insights we gleaned are used to continuously optimize the program, allowing us to provide a more contextual and relevant experience and the most appealing offers for each customer. We believe at Canadian Tire that personalization isn't where successful loyalty programs are going. It's where they are today. But we believe that the generative AI era requires a data infrastructure that is flexible, scalable, and efficient. And our behind-the-curtains work on the structuring of our customer data positions us to utilize AI for advantage. Sustained loyalty requires hyper-personalization through one-to-one offers and experiences that resonate with customers on a personal level, creating a strong emotional connection that keeps them coming back. The second key for putting the customer at the core of everything is a mindset shift in terms of how we view our business. We needed to move from seeing ourselves as an old-school conglomerate or holding company, one with individual retail banners, financial services, and a real estate arm that all operate separately, to an operating company whereby we put the customer at the center. In this model, we think about how our group of companies as a collective can shift its relevancy from share of wallet to share of life. The mindset shift is critical. I say is, not was, because the mindset shift is still work in progress for us and might be 10x more difficult than the investment in the right capabilities. When we began this journey, the average Canadian didn't even know that Canadian Tire Corporation owned Sport Chek or Mark's. Our organizational structure is predominantly decentralized around each of our businesses, with some shared functions and matrixed accountabilities. When you operate this way, not only is it tough to take advantage of any real scale, but the trust halo we've built at Canadian Tire can't transcend to and benefit our other banners. It certainly isn't easy bringing all of your banners and brands together in the operating company format, but it's not impossible. Especially for us when you have a strong, unified loyalty program to power your transition. A loyalty program where each component gains scale and advantage from the system, and all components work together to amplify and render each other more valuable. The result of this evolution for us is what we call our Triangle flywheel, which is so much more than a loyalty program. It's a system whereby consumer trust begets more trust and connection begets more connection. All it needs is that first push. When we acquire a new Triangle member in one of our banners, there is great value created in all of our banners. We use the system and all of its components to create more value one member at a time, value that keeps that member coming back. It's the essence of a fundamentally new business model for us, a business model where more and more of our revenue can be recurring over time, almost acting as an annuity and creating a competitive moat around our business. And if we do this right, the end result is trust. And as I said, trust is the crux of our strategy. We are building an emotionally connected, data-enabled organization. And as our flywheel continues to gain momentum, it spins out opportunities to create new products, new partnerships, and new profit pools. Last year, we launched a new product, Triangle Select, our subscription loyalty program that delivers enhanced value across the system to our members. And by the end of the year, the program had over 45,000 members. But what was more important is that we had evidence that the program worked. In 2023, select members visited our retail banners more often and spent almost 40% more than similar members who were part of our control group. Now we're moving our focus to scaling membership, including launching a series of tests to a large portion of our membership that offer subscription trial or the opportunity to sample some of Select's most valued benefits to encourage subscription. On the partnerships front, such as our recently launched partnership with Petro-Canada, we can drive greater Canadian Tire money issuance, capture even more first-party data, which fuels our flywheel. And finally, although it's still early days, we're very excited about the potential of our retail media business, Triangle Retail Media. Data, and more specifically shopper data, is the lifeblood of differentiation for emerging retail media networks as an advertising service to marketers. All of the investment that I just talked about that we have made to structure our data in our core business for granular audience creation and the deep ability to personalize communications in our digital assets and channels is ideally suited to help brands provide more relevant ads to their customers. In addition to this being a new revenue stream for us, it strengthens our connection to our existing vendor partners. That helps us ensure we continue to have trusted, reliable brands, which in turn fuels the flywheel. In summary, although retailers are facing an uphill battle between the disruption challenge, the post-pandemic affordability challenge, and the change challenge, there are tools at our disposal to reach the summit. Choosing which to use requires a clear understanding of not only where you need to compete, but also how you'll differentiate yourself to win. For us, it's about remaining committed to driving trust and building that emotional connection through our Better Connected strategy. Since introducing the strategy 2 years ago, we've invested $1.4 billion in capital, the vast majority of which has been targeted to growth initiatives, which by and large are more than just an investment in CTC, they're an investment in this country. Now, if that sounds like too bold a statement, allow me to offer some data to back it up. In 2022, we commissioned Public First for an economic impact report for CTC. Their findings revealed that we supported an estimated $18 billion in gross value added in 2021, the equivalent of 1% of the Canadian economy, or the support of 160,000 jobs. And over the previous decade, our economic impact was approximately $150 billion. But our investment in Canada also extends to our communities, which is critical not only to reinforcing that emotional connection and trust Canadians have in us, but it is quite simply the right thing to do. At CTC, we've always believed in the power of sport to unite the nation, bring communities together, and put kids on a positive path for life. And over the past decade, we've invested more than $100 million in amateur sport. Since 2005, Canadian Tire Jumpstart has helped more than 4 million kids overcome the barriers to sport and recreation. What started as a mandate to break down financial barriers, Jumpstart expanded to tackle accessibility and gender barriers as well. Last year alone, Jumpstart dispersed over 1,000 grants to support community programming. They also completed construction on 7 new inclusive play spaces, bringing the total incremental square footage added since 2017 to more than 550,000, or the equivalent of 32 NHL hockey rinks. We also believe that sport has the power to inspire social change, which is why we're taking a lead role in driving gender equity in sport through our Women's Sport Initiative. The gap between the money female athletes make versus their male counterparts was, and still is, cavernous. But we're doing our part to close that gap by committing half our sponsorship dollars to women's professional sports. We believe that by investing in women's sport, we're investing in women, and that is a good investment for Canada. Supporting our local communities is not a new idea for us, though. It was instilled by our founders, and Canadian Tire dealers have embraced this spirit of giving wholeheartedly. From generously donating to critical local organizations and infrastructure, to stepping up during storms and natural disasters, to supporting community groups and sports teams, we never have to ask them to make life better. Because as Canadian Tire dealers, it's just what they do. When we say that we're here to make life in Canada better, we mean it. This is not window dressing or a catchy slogan. This is who we are. And we're putting our money where our mouth is. And the result is not only increased trust and a deeper emotional connection, but a stronger nation overall. Canada needs businesses to step up and eradicate our weak record in business investment. Business investment levels are lower than they were a decade ago. And although not the only reason, this lack of investment as a percentage of GDP is a large contributor to our country's weak productivity. Our purpose is not something that we back away from when times get tough. If anything, the current challenges point to the fact that we need to double down for the future of our company and our nation. Thanks very much for your time today, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you, Greg. Yep, this is great. Perfect. And thank you so much for spending your time with us today. We really appreciate it. And thanks for plugging productivity. On April 23rd, we've got a panel on Canada's Productivity Challenge, and it's got to be top of the agenda for everybody. So
sure.
For mentioning that. So we've got about 15, maybe on the 15, 16 minutes for questions. So please submit your questions.
Be nice.
Be nice. You covered a lot of ground there. With the data, maybe just to start off, with the data and the view of the Canadian consumer you have now, how would you say the consumer is doing in Canada?
It's tough. You know, it's really tough, and we have all sorts of data, as I outline, you suggest, et cetera. When you look in aggregate, when you look at what's happening in terms of spend in the average Canadian household, I'd say we saw a marked decrease in consumer spending almost immediately when the surprise interest rate came down in June of 2023. To those who aren't in the industry, I tell them that story and they just don't believe that it's that causal or direct. And we saw it immediately in our data, and it continued to progress and widen throughout the balance of 2023 and into 2024. And the softened consumer spending really was impacted in every income level, across the country. But where we really have seen it show up materially is in highly indebted households in the suburbs of Ontario and BC, which would probably stand to reason given the amount of, just migration out of big city centers in the early days of COVID and larger mortgages. We, as you point out, we have a financial services organization, lots of data, over $20 billion worth of spend on our credit cards, with a small percentage of that in businesses that we own. And I think the average Canadian household, based on the data that we see, is spending on food and shelter, and just cutting back on everything else. If you keep double clicking and you think about how it's showing up in the four walls of the businesses that we own. We're seeing absolutely a trend to repair versus replacement. We're seeing trade down in quality, the quality and price architecture, good, better, best, best to better, better to good. And we are absolutely seeing a fairly wide performance bifurcation between our essential and discretionary businesses. And although I think we like to say that we're avoiding, as a country, a technical recession, I think it's very safe to say that we've been in a discretionary product recession for many quarters. So overall, I don't think it's a very good picture, unfortunately. I think the consumer is in tough, and And there's some structural uncertainty with respect to mortgage rates and very stubborn inflation. And so the Bank of Canada and others have a tough job, and we're waiting for the right signals. I think we'll look for hopefully beyond a signal and some hardened action around a reduction in rates as we move throughout the year this year, and hopefully we see that immediate causal consumer behavior the other way, and we'll certainly be able to pick up signals from the customer once that happens.
Right. Now, one aspect of Canadian Tire, I guess, is the breadth of the assortment and the breadth of the brands gives you some discretionary, but non-discretionary as well, exposure. But with that must come a lot of complexity in the supply chain. And when we had Tiff Macklem here in December talking about the rate environment and talking about supply chain shortening, potentially being an inflationary element, how are you adjusting the supply chain strategy and trying to prevent a cost transfer to Canadians who are already under pressure?
Yeah, I mean, dual focus for sure in our supply chain organization and function. It's been a hallmark capability for us for years. I mean, operating in this country in retail, I think a lot of retailers that have come up here from the South just realize how difficult the supply chain is. So this is a core capability of Canadian Tire. We've been working at it for 100 years. And the dual focus really was access to product, during COVID in a structure issue in the global supply chain industry and supply side economics. And I think we really used our capabilities and our relationships, whether that be freight forwarding or railco or transport company, or just inside the four walls of our centralized supply chain centers, to be able to punch above our weight and get Canadians the products they were looking for when they were hunkered down in their homes. But with that brought enormous inefficiency, not just to our supply chain, but many supply chains around the world on the retail product side of things. Lots of third-party logistics facilities needed to be stood up, integrated from a technology standpoint, to just be able to manage the throughput associated with the boom in discretionary product demand. And so now we're starting to see that unwind. Right. Things like global freight rates are a fraction of what they were in the height of the pandemic. Factories are below capacity as opposed to above capacity all over the world. The ports from a capacity standpoint, the railcos operating with better efficiency, et cetera. So we see much more normalization, and that normalization is flowing into the cost of goods, and the cost of goods is flowing, through to the consumer. And the dual function was, while all that was going on, we were investing and embarking on a pretty significant automation technology deployment strategy in our network. And it started with really thinking about the role of the store in e-commerce. In our Canadian Tire banner, about 30% of the total square footage of the average store is a warehouse. And so how we utilize that 30 million square feet in a unified forward deployed supply chain to be able to compete and win same day in e-commerce. That was a big work effort for us. And then we turned our attention during the height of COVID to really investing in our centralized fulfillment centers. So we stood up a 1.3 million fully automated square foot distribution center for our apparel businesses. Last year, in the height of all this, we expanded to large centralized fulfillment centers, and we deployed automated goods-to-person technology. And so we feel like now we're just starting to get to the other side where we can drive some leverage in our P&L around the supply chain, and that'll be good for customers as well. The variable cost per pick and ship for both our core business and our bricks business and our e-commerce business is coming down, going in the right direction, and we just haven't had that luxury over the course of the last few years. But all that to say, I think Canadians should feel good about the fact that the supply chain and its inflationary impact is subsiding. We're getting back to normal for sure, if we're not already there now.
Right. There's a few questions about machine learning and technology, and maybe you talked a lot about the data investments. And when I think about Canadian Tire and the unique sort of dealer-owned structure, I think of the dealers as the original data and analytics, right? They're in the market, they know what the local market needs. How does the adoption of technology the way you are change the dealer's role or their kind of local market discretion, or does it?
A ton. My father owned a Canadian Tire store, so I worked in the store, when I was a younger guy, and when I came to the corporation many years ago, I thought I knew how to run a store, and
I'm sure everyone appreciated that.
Yeah, at that time, yeah. There is no way I could run one of our stores these days. They are, fully integrated technological operations, and that goes all the way from visibility back into the supply chain to receiving product at the back door and moving it efficiently with data to the floor, the selection of merchandise curated, to local demand profiles, all done through AI on proprietary platforms that we've built over the last few years. And to the untrained eye, you walk into one of our new concept stores as part of our Better Connected strategy, and the technology is fairly subtle. But from an operations standpoint, there's nothing subtle about it at all. The stores just could not operate, without technology. From employee-facing devices to customer-facing devices to, micro-fulfillment, automated capabilities around, the storage, the receiving, the replenishment, and the geolocating of inventory. And I think one of the things that has been really beneficial, and we're just starting to feel like we're at value creation on this, is you deploy point-to-point solutions into a retail environment, whether that's a new POS or for us an auto service business or something to do with ordering or pricing or search for store associates. It goes on and on and on. Those systems eventually, if you want to become customer focused, need to all connect. And so part of that customer data that I talked about and the organization and structuring of it, we had hundreds of different systems that were collecting some sort of customer data. So whether you had a returns desk at the store or the auto service counter, or you sign up for an auto club membership, or you have a credit card, or you're on our website, et cetera. And so the work effort to be able to connect all of that, to be able to understand, or I guess the macro capability is customer understanding, has been no small work effort. And as I said in my prepared remarks, we believe what gets forgotten in terms of the utilization of some of these emerging technologies is the ability to have your data structured for it to actually, the machine to do its thing. Just this great breakthrough generative AI technology in the absence of the right structure, you're not going to create a lot of value. And so we're in a position now where we think we can really scale value because it just doesn't work on its own.
Right.
And so, yeah, the stores, like I said, it's an unbelievably different experience in the running of the store and how a customer engages in their shopping journey. It may start online and end in store, or vice versa. And just that connection, talk about the importance of connection in the Better Connected strategy, is it's such a wholesale change.
Yeah, and just the building blocks, the data building blocks you've put in place is so important. And 11 million Triangle members is a lot richer a data set than paper Canadian Tire money. However, I will say, when you talked about the emotional connection, I was telling Susan, I was thinking about, as a child, when I was 8, I would get all the Canadian Tire money that my parents would collect, and I would hoard this stuff. And then I would go to the Hespeler Road store, and I would stare at the fishing lures, because I had $7. This is before the $1 denomination, so that's a big stack.
Yep.
And I would just stare at it, right? So for me, going to Canadian Tire was possibility, and it was agency that I didn't have in my 8-year-old life anywhere else. Like, I could buy stuff. It was really exciting, and I think that made it an emotional connection. How else do you look at emotional connection as we move away from Canadian Tire money, which we have? How else do you think about it? And there's a few questions about Canadian Tire money.
Okay. Yeah, sure. I love those kind of personal experience stories, and I think that is the quintessential essence of the emotional connection, right?
Right.
In that, we curate an assortment for life in Canada. We don't have 2 million products in our digital catalog. like some of the e-commerce folks that we compete with. So whether it is those local dealers or our buyers and now the customer data that can provide us a pulse, we're kind of your concierge for the jobs and joys of life in Canada. And so I think if we do that right, because we are here, living here, understanding what it's like and seasons and starts and firsts and what the country needs, just those product experiences should provide,
Right.
a great degree of emotional connection. And there's no one thing. I think, it's a series of things that this organization has done over time. I tried to hit on a few of them with respect to how we think about community and what literally lives in our DNA.
Right. Yeah.
I think the company has done well by the country, over the years, and we've set up this strategy to really accentuate those positives, to really make a difference, and then having that targeted outcome be emotional connection.
Yep. Okay. And then for we've got a few different questions that hit at the same thing. Some people must be emotionally connected to their bills still, but there's a question: what can I do with my leftover Canadian Tire paper money?
Just keep it. Just keep it. I have a nice drawer of it. This is Canada. I think you can. I actually think you can take it into the store, and you can.
Oh, there you go. That's the official word. You can take it to the store.
Take it into the store and convert it for a whole bunch of great durable goods that you need.
A couple that are environmentally related. What's Canadian Tire doing for the environment and sustainability and protecting the land? Just can you say a little bit more about your sustainability?
Yeah, I mean, it's not new for us, but how we organize, the organization, because there's no one function really in terms of how we're centralized, or in terms of how we're structured, that really gets at thinking through ESG at a macro consumer level when we go to market in the manner in which that I talked about. And so, we have spent a lot of time organizing a leadership committee led by Susan here, our ESG council, and last year was the first year we put out an ESG report that has commitments on a whole number of fronts. That works itself now right into our capital planning agenda. And one of the things that we think helps us steward in this area is we have a committee of the board, a formal committee of the board that looks after and stewards our brand. And as you heard from my discussion today, we take brand pretty seriously. It's something we nurture, and the commitments that we make from an ESG standpoint are important to our brand. They're important to our employees. They're important to our customers, and so we put the requisite amount of formality now into that, all overseen by a broad cross-section of executives and supported by our board. And so I couldn't be happier about the progress that we're making. If you've got any bedtime reading, it's a pretty good report, and you can get a pretty good sense of all the things that we're working on.
Great. And a related question, maybe one level deeper. You mentioned the change challenge and connecting with the core customer as priorities. Now, electrification is a big change taking place in Canada, maybe at different rates. But how do you believe Canadian Tire has the opportunity to evolve and respond to electrification? Now, I'm assuming they mean vehicles and stations.
It's a great question, and I think there's some fallacy associated with the implications that it could have on a business like Canadian Tire. And we see the electrification of Canada's car park as a structural tailwind for us going forward. The top 5 jobs in an automotive service center represent 85% of our business, and the majority of those jobs still live on with electrification. And so, depending on what study you have, the car park right now penetration 2.5–3% probably in Canada, but growing pretty significantly. And it's in our name. So EVs need tires, they need front end suspension, they need brakes, and the weight of these vehicles relative to traditional combustion engines drives wear out. Much greater on all those critical parts. And right now, probably because of a scale disadvantage, the average price per part is significantly higher. So for us, we have the most amount of service bays in this country. We've got capacity in that asset going forward. We have spent a significant amount of time deploying technology around the customer experience specifically. And we think we're poised with all of the assets to be a winner as EV penetration really moves through the fleet in the country.
Okay. We've got probably time for one more, but we've got many. So I'll give you two and you can choose.
Sure.
How's that for a nice moderator? Can you share an insight gleaned from data, and your unique data, I guess, that led to a strategy or a tactical change or growth? Or we've got others saying, tell me more about Triangle Retail Media. So take your pick, and we'll probably wrap it there.
Well, I'll leave you wanting more on Triangle Retail Media. It's new for us, as I said. We're really excited, and the great thing is all the capabilities that we've been building sets us up very, very well to go after this new profit opportunity. The acquisition of Party City was almost exclusively done through the interrogation of our customer data. To some who cover our stock, maybe even some of our big investors, they were, giving us a little bit of a head nod when we announced that acquisition. And then when you walk them through the crossover in terms of especially CTR, Canadian Tire Retail, and Party City, they're the same customer. And our ability to engage with a younger, more female-oriented metric or customer demographic and an active household where absolute sweet spot for us from a customer standpoint. The acquisition was so much more in terms of the customer overlay and what we expected to get at a per customer level, not only in terms of what we could bring Party City in terms of access to 11.4 million members and tucking them into our Triangle program, but what Party City could do for our business at the member level. So of course we take the board through traditional metrics like EBITDA and a multiple and cash flow and assets and all those types of things. But I can tell you, I remember vividly, because I was the one standing up there, suggesting that we needed to do this. Most of the analytics that we walked our board through that ended up in us acquiring Party City's Canadian operation, where it was 80% customer, 20% numerics, traditional numerics.
Right, and driven from your own data and assessment of it. Okay.
Absolutely.
Can I give you a few seconds for a last word? Anything we didn't cover that you wanted to leave us with before we wrap?
No, I mean, as I said, I'm a little out of practice with these types of things, so I'm flattered that you spent some time with me and the team. I've got a lot of team members here today. I have an absolutely fantastic team that lives brand purpose every single day. So hopefully you got a chance to meet some of them today, and I just appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thank you. We can just wrap up here, frankly. And I'll just say, on behalf of the club, thank you so much for spending time with us. It was enlightening, and we really wish you and team all the best. Everyone's rooting for Canadian Tire on some level, and we hope to see you back here for an update sometime soon.
Great.
Now, before we wrap, let me just share a little bit more about some of our events for the rest of April. On April 9th, we're hosting an evening event at LinkedIn's Toronto offices. So this is all about modern networking. Should be a lot of fun. April 23rd, as I've mentioned, we're hosting a panel called Attacking Canada's Productivity Problem, including John Ruffalo from Mavericks Private Equity, Chief Charlene Gale from the First Nations Major Projects Coalition, and Carolyn Wilkins, a distinguished economist and central banker. On April 29th, we'll discuss how to build more and better housing for Canadians with the Honourable Lisa Raitt, Richard Joy, and Jennifer Keesmaat. And on April 30th, we'll host the Chairman and CEO of Sagard, Paul Desmarais III. It's going to be a great month. Hope to see you back here soon. I want to thank our AV partners, VVC Live, for their ongoing support. Again, EY, Tories, and Norton Rose Fulbright for their event sponsorship today. And thanks to everybody in the room and online for joining us. We hope to see you again soon. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.